Shalom, Chaverim. Welcome, my friends. We're back for another Soulful Psalms. Now, by way of contrast, I will start by reminding you that when we were in the 60s Psalms, I felt like they were a little too stereotypical, boilerplate, a bit repetitive, not so much unique for us to reflect on. Now we are in the 90s. Beard's getting a little crazy there. We are in the 90s, and by contrast, the Psalms that are in the 90s offer us a fantastic range of interesting things to consider. We've already talked about Psalm 90 and the whole theme of uh, mutability and change and death. And we talked about Psalm 91, the anti-demonic psalm. And now we're at Psalm 92. Psalm 92 has a lot of things going on in it. And you can tell that because in the Reform, and actually in all Jewish prayer books, elements of it are chunked off and used in different settings. Virtually the entire psalm appears in different contexts because there's just a lot of juicy stuff going on in it. And so that's what I want to talk with you about now. So we'll begin with the superscription, which actually doesn't assign it to anyone. The superscription is simple. It says a psalm, a song for the Sabbath day. So this is apparently a Shabbat song. Now, it's not completely clear why this gets designated a Shabbat song because there's not that much Shabbat specific going on in the composition. Best guess from the various scholars who have reflected on this is that it was sung in the temple. And there is a passage in it where it alludes to being in the temple. And so this would mark it as if you go up to the temple on Shabbat, this is what you're going to hear. And it's not concerned so much with rest or with the cessation of work or the rules of Shabbat and the way we imagine it today, how it's practiced in Jewish homes. But that is its designation. So, at least in part, it's used uh, as Shabbat liturgy, and it's also used in other contexts also. So let's start and take a look at this right now. Now, the first part will be familiar to you because we use this part as one of the Psalms in, the word will come to me, Kabbalat Shabbat, the Psalms that we recite in the little pre-service before we get to the traditional service on a Friday night. This is the section that includes Lecha Dodi, and actually, the way we've arranged it is that we do Lecha Dodi to welcome Shabbat, and then the first verses of Psalm 92 are our prayer for the actual Sabbath. So let me recite this for you, and we can maybe think about it a little bit. Verse 1, a psalm, a song for the Sabbath day. 2, it is good to praise the Lord, to sing hymns to your name, O Most High. Parallelism, to proclaim your steadfast love at daybreak, your faithfulness each night. That's a hendiety, where you put two polar elements in contrast to each other. So daybreak, night creates a sense of totality with a 10-string harp with voice and lyre together. That probably suggests that this was originally performed in the context of the temple, because not many people were sitting around with, a banjo and a fiddle on Shabbat evening. This is something happening in the temple. You have gladdened me by your deeds, O Lord. I shout for joy at your handiwork. And then it goes on to get even more ecstatic about the creative force of God, which is a Shabbat theme. How great are your works, O Lord? How very subtle your design. And then a contrast in verse 7 and 8, and this is also suggests that this belongs to the wisdom literature tradition, where oftentimes in wisdom literature they'll say a fool will say this, but a wise man will say that. So here it goes. A brutish man cannot know, a fool cannot understand this. Though the wicked sprout like grass, though all evildoers blossom, it is only that they will be destroyed forever. But you are exalted, O Lord, for all times. Now, this should sound somewhat familiar to you, and that is about the intransigence of evil. We may encounter it, it may seem to be overwhelming, but in the end, it will fail while God succeeds, God endures. So that's the first section, but this is also used here in other places. Verse 10, surely your enemies, O Lord, surely your enemies perish. All evildoers are scattered. Now, this sounds very dramatic. It sounds like it's part of the MCU. I don't think that's completely accidental. Right? Because what are comic book superheroes about? They're fighting cosmic enemies, overcoming them, and restoring order to the universe. In point of fact, the enemies here may be either other gods, demons, or other cosmic forces. There is actually a parallel bit of poetry in the Ugaritic tradition where it talks about the battle between Baal and Yam, that is, between the chief god of the pantheon of Ugarit and the cosmic sea monster Yam that must be defeated. So I think this is still appealing to that more cosmic level. It's not necessarily your enemies, it's chaos. God will overcome chaos. All right. You raise my horn high like that of a wild ox. I am soaked in freshening oil. I shall see the defeat of my watchful foes, hear the downfall of the wicked who beset me. Now, this moves the conflict from a cosmic level down to interpersonal, intertribal, communal conflict. But the idea is that what happens on high will also be realized on a human level. And then you'll also be familiar with this. The righteous bloom like a date palm. They thrive like a cedar in Lebanon. They flourish in the courts of our God. Verse 15. In old age, they still produce fruit. They are full of sap and freshness, attesting that the Lord is upright, my rock in whom there is no wrong. Now, there we see actually the echo of a number of wisdom tropes that we can find in, for example, the book of Proverbs, this idea that we are plants that thrive and produce fruit. This is a beloved metaphor of proverbial wisdom. And we are planted in the courts of our God, that is the temple. Again, another allusion to the idea that this may have originally, in its original context, been recited on the temple grounds, full of sap and freshness, attesting that the Lord is upright, my rock in whom there is no wrong. So eventually, if imperfectly, God's triumph on high will transmit down to us. So it's a trickle down theory of righteousness. So it's a beautiful series of tropes that appear through this. It has strong elements of the biblical wisdom tradition. It seems to be set in the context of going to the temple on the Sabbath. And each one of these poetic characterizations fill us with comfort and maybe a sense of calm and assurance on the day when we should feel calm and assured. So there you have Psalm 92. You will find it in at least 3 different places in Jewish prayer books, using different elements of it. A lovely psalm that inspires us with comfort that God is working behind the scenes to make things better. Thank you, everyone, for listening, and I will see you next week.